And start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to roll call.
Frank Myers. Here. Martha Patterson. Casey Benner.
Here.
Leanne Woodvogel.
Here.
Nicole Boyer. We have a quorum.
Okay. We will move on to the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I move to approve the agenda.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to the approval of minutes from our last meeting, which was December 21st of 2020.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to the introduction of evidence.
I have the guidelines and city ordinances here for reference, and then you have staff reports in the center of the table that you were sent on Friday, I believe.
Move to accept the evidence as presented. I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to old business.
I have none.
Okay, we will move on to new business. We will start with SGHC 006-21 to receive a certificate of appropriateness to erect an illuminated digital LED freestanding monument sign on the property at 49 Dubourg Place. Do we have anyone here to speak on that? Could you come to the podium and introduce yourself, please?
Good evening. My name is Father Edward Nemeth. I'm the pastor of St. Genevieve Catholic Church. We are approaching you this evening about installing an LED marquee sign at the corner of 4th and Market Street. I have to say that to anyone that knows me and the work that since I've become pastor, we have done a lot of work for the preservation of our historic church. And if there was a political spectrum on which we judge people in the church, I'm probably one of the most traditional you could ever find. So it seems somewhat incongruous that I would be standing here wanting to put an LED sign in the corner of a historic church, but let me explain. I'm kind of a foodie, and one of my favorite chefs is an Italian. It was Massimo Bottura, and he was hated by the chefs in Italy because he was trying to take old recipes and make them better, and you can't do that. I mean, Grandma made her pesto this way forever, but finally something worked. And his phrase is tradition in evolution, and I've always liked that. You take the best things of our tradition, and how do you evolve them into the future? I think in St. Genevieve, the reason we are wanting to put this sign here is to do exactly that. Our church, our community, our city, especially the historic district, is not a time capsule. We see a variance of different decades and centuries of architecture, of structures. I mean, we have a gas station was just painted across the road. We have a new U.S. bank. So it is not outside the realm to consider putting some sort of a sign. The question is, why would we seek to do this? And that's what I want to speak about tonight. The St. Genevieve Catholic Church has been the cornerstone of this city since its foundation. The church, obviously, in more historic times, the church was kind of that nucleus that held everything together. Now times have changed, the world has changed. But what has not changed is the fact that we want to celebrate the tradition of this town. But we need to borrow from the for-profit world best practices of what is going to allow people to join in us in celebrating our tradition. We are in a unique moment in our city's history with the granting of the status of a national historical park. that we must capitalize on every opportunity that we can to celebrate what's going on in town. We as a parish feel that our property on the corner of 4th and Market, we know, is the busiest intersection in town. It is also where we can capture the hearts and minds of people as they come to visit us. So whether that's the young couple on their honeymoon going to B&B, whether that's someone trying to click off every national park in the passbook. We think that on this corner, we can do a lot for our community, for our town. Now, there's not one of us in this room that doesn't have that has 100% altruistic motives. Obviously, we're somewhat selfish. I want people to worship with us. I want people to know Mass times, know our events. However, we feel we must be good community members and partners and stewards and be able to use this sign to celebrate the things going on in town, whether that's the Christmas Festival, the Chocolate Walk, the French Heritage Festival, the Rural Heritage Festival, and whatever that might be. We think we are primed in a location to be able to do the most good for people who are coming to visit us. So though it may seem somewhat out of the regular to be wanting to put a sign like this, we can assure you it will be tastefully done in keeping with the architecture of the rectory that is currently at the corner, but also that we would use it as good partners with the city and with the county, with all of our different organizations that are trying to preserve our great history. So I'd like to thank you for your attention and time tonight, and I have 2 other members with me that are available if we have any questions that we can answer regarding this project. Thank you.
Sir, are you tied to that particular spot on the church grounds?
Man, we're tied to nothing. Everything's up for negotiation.
Well, it looks like you have a nice green swath on the left side of the church itself, which would also be visible for some distance since it's on a hill, and it would not be the first thing that a person sees entering St. Genevieve.
You're talking about the north lawn of the church facing northeast, where
Yes.
we have a current letter sign.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure. We had considered that. Again, the reason we like that position is it captures so much more attention. By the time someone does the round of town and would see that sign, they've already missed most of the attractions that we might be trying to help market for the various different organizations and groups in town. So though we might be open to that, it certainly isn't the preferable real estate for us. We want to capture and maximize views as people come into town.
Well, the people coming into town, I mean, you can't get into the town without seeing the steeple of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And the church and its buildings are very impressive, and I can understand why the congregation of that church is anxious for people to see it. It is something to see. It's a beautiful structure. My only concern is the precedent it may set. Not so much in the daytime, but at night. I would hate to be able to drive into St. Genevieve and see nothing but highlighted beer signs and whatever else comes along.
I understand. You don't want St. Genevieve to look like Times Square.
That is basically my concern, is what comes next. If we approve this, that becomes the excuse to approve the next one, which may not be desirable.
I see your point, definitely. I guess it comes down to whether or not this committee is run by kind of presidential decisions. So are we setting a precedent? Is an LED sign that is for community information the same as a stag sign outside the sandbar? I would say no. I would say that's different, and I think it's up to this committee to look at each case individually, to say, well, this serves not just the particular institution, which I've already admitted it does, but would seek to serve the greater community. Because I'll be honest, I think we as a community need to do a better job at that. Across the street from here, we have a sign that is to celebrate community events that's 1 month out date with still December dates on it. So I think there's a service we can provide while also still serving our own constituency.
Well, I personally think, and not opposed to the sign, it's just that I'm opposed to the precedent, and I think before we approve of such a sign for the church, we should modify the criteria for signs to ensure that there is a guidance there as to what can be approved and what should not be approved.
And that is a purview of your committee.
I have a question. Approximately.
I'm sorry, I've been asked, I can't tell who's talking.
Approximately how far back from the corner will it sit? Did I overlook it in the paperwork?
So the paperwork we submitted was kind of thrown together. The sign looks bigger than it is, but if you all are familiar with the vinyl signs we've been hanging there, they're around 4 by 8 for the welcome students or whatever. It's about the same size, and it would sit right in that corner.
Okay, because my only concern was, would it obstruct the view of traffic if someone's
No.
coming back
No.
up the street, if it is as
So-
large as?
And I did have one other comment for the gentleman. It's a state-of-the-art sign.
Okay,
Bill's done this his whole life. It could be dimmed, so it's not gonna be like you pull up and do the Gris balls, turn the light on. I mean, it can be, it's not gonna be a hazard in any way.
Okay.
It can be dimmed. One of the reasons we chose that corner is it's the only corner around our property that nobody that lives there would be able to see it. You know, in other words, we wouldn't be just interrupting anybody that sleeps or whatever have you. That's kind of why Bill and I chose that corner.
Well, I kind of like the idea of it being able to dim it at night too,
Yes.
because I know that those LED signs can be like
Oh, yeah.
blindingly bright.
It can
and
be
it's
very impressive,
Right on the,
yes, yeah.
right on the road.
You're talking to the gentleman that lives in the house behind it, so he's not gonna want it for.
Right, and I've got those dusk to dawn, Citizens Electric lights hanging in my backyard, but shining into my, bedroom every night, so I'm very cognizant of that. Yeah, and that is one of the benefits of that location is residential houses aren't going to be impacted by that in the evening.
It could, this sign that Bill's proposing could even be on a timer where it went off from midnight to 6 or whatever, if that was advantageous, so. Bill has extensive background. He has done every sign in Busch Stadium at one time before he got old enough to retire, so he's.
do we have any additional questions?
Well, our design guidelines about exterior lighting says they should be simple in character and low in intensity. I understand your reasoning, but I still think it would be a detriment to the historical image of both the church and the church environs and the rest of the town.
Is it similar to the sign out at like the hospital where you can put pictures and
Yes.
everything?
Yes.
When you look at the hospital MRB bank, they're much larger than what we're proposing.
Or is it in the historical
And it's
district?
not particularly attractive,
Right, I would agree.
Yeah,
but it's allowable. And that's what I'm concerned about. One of my concerns is that we don't set a precedent for the downtown area that any business can put up a large lighted sign at night. It's bad enough in the daytime, but you drive into a town, in my experience in traveling, you get quite an impression by the lighted atmosphere of the town. And if it's nothing but some bad signs or the advertising signs, your impression is not good. And I don't know how, the church has been here, I think, forever since the community was started. I've only been here 50 years, but there's a wealth of effort that has gone into the town to make it better. We have streets, we have sidewalks, we have street lighting, we have all kinds of buildings corrected, we have the old historic cemetery corrected. All these things were done based on the historic significance of this town. and we don't dare mar that. I'm not talking about marring the appearance of the church. As I say, the church is a thing of beauty. Come down the highway and just look up and there is the church. Get on the river and look back, there is the church. It won't be forgotten, it isn't hidden. It's very easily can be called the center of the community. But I don't want to see the community effort hurt by a policy that allows any kind of a sign. And that's why I say if we want a sign, we should modify the ordinance or the instructions as to just what is permitted and what is not, so that we don't. I know we turned down 2 in the last couple of years, lighted signs in the community because they felt the appearance was bad. And I just don't like to have to make decisions based on guidance that doesn't give enough guidance.
Well, and I think that certainly comes back to that as the purview of this committee is to decide what is keeping with the best interest of the town. And I'd say if an individual business is putting up their own marquee that is only to benefit their business, then, you know, that has to be taken in consideration. The position I come from is, you know, we are a town that is positioned to be able to launch forward into the future with bringing over 100,000 people into our town with this new national park status and being able to maximize our events and to grow tourism to the town, which will in turn have a positive impact on our commerce and economy. That this is not just a sign just for the church, but one that we want to enhance the entire community. So, but I think there needs to be this oversight of this committee to make sure that things are keeping in what is the best interest of the community.
With all due respect, Father, our purpose here is to interpret applications as how they fit into our guidelines, which were sent to us by the city. And so far as I can tell by our guidelines, it does not. We had a discussion about that once before, where an individual property wanted to do things that were quite permissible for an individual property, but it was still not a popular alteration. But we had to allow that because it went by the guidelines. And the guidelines that I'm reading right now on lighting just don't allow for that sort of sign.
Well, if that's the decision of the committee, it might be then a chance for us to come back and appeal. It may be time to modernize the guidelines of the committee itself.
Well, that's what Frank was just saying.
Sure, and I agree with that, yeah.
But at this point, individual choice as to appropriateness is not a real concern here. We have to go by what is in our given guidelines. And I'm all for the motives that you're stating. I think it's a wonderful idea, but this type of light is just not addressed.
So it is, well, that's a further discussion, I think. If it's not addressed, then you have to ask whether or not there is actual precedent to support a decision for or against, and that's probably the purview of this committee to go forward and say, how do we take what we have and apply it to the newer technologies? So,
Well, and from the book, exterior lights, signs, should be simple in character and low in intensity. And the purpose of a sign like this is to gather attention and be quite obvious.
but is not the intention of every sign to gather attention?
Yes, but the other signs are not in the historic area.
Okay. So a banner we would hang on, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, as bad as that may sound. So a banner that we hang is you would say then it's drawing attention, but that it's not
Temporary.
flashy.
It is
It's
temporary.
I would insert into the conversation that we do have guidelines on signs, and while they're not specific to every situation, they're purposefully not specific to each situation, so that this commission can take the input and make a decision. But they do exist. I just want to make sure that's clear.
There is also a section in the sign about if an internal illumination is used on a sign, it should be designed to be subordinate to the overall building composition. Internal illumination of an entire sign panel is discouraged. If the internal illumination is used, a system that backlights the sign text only is preferred. Neon and other tubular illumination may be considered. However, use neon in limited amounts so it does not become visually obstructive. But I know you said you could dim it, we could set it to a timer, but there is a section kind of on the internal illuminated signs.
Well, throw into this. You all have seen the new museum at lit up tonight. You've seen Valley School lit up tonight. Those are two of my projects. Now, I don't want to come in here and put this sign, or have to be involved in the sign work and overdo it. I just want to let that out. So I know Mr. Myers is concerned, coming into town, you see this sign out across from City Hall. It's from 1960. It's not very attractive, and it's still got stuff from December. For this project, more modern, sure. Yes, it's going to be lit from the inside, but I think somewhere we got to start moving along here and accept other things. I mean, it's in the guidelines. Should the guidelines be readjusted? I don't know, but my point is, I won't be involved in if it's an overkill. And like I said, if you look at those two buildings we just did, there are some of our projects we've done so far.
I can't see this sign being any brighter at nighttime than what the Oris does when you drive up that street, that big old neon sign that's been there for
30,
100 years.
40 years. So,
Just me thinking out loud.
Do you have any other questions for me or for my team that we could answer for you before you make your deliberations, whatever that looks like for your own committee? Okay, well, we appreciate the opportunity, truly, and we do appreciate the work that you do to help preserve the aesthetic of our town, because it is extremely important. So please know that. We definitely appreciate your work, and anything we can ever do in the future to help, please let us know.
Thank you, Tom.
What do you think?
Are we ready to make a motion to move forward? Do we want to motion to table it? To,
Moment of discussion?
okay,
I think with the guidelines, it doesn't look
Mhm.
like it fits. I said according to the guidelines, it doesn't fit, but I also understand that perspective too of it's a balancing act of,
I look at it too, it's also not attached directly to the building.
right.
It's in the yard. You know, so it's a tough one. It would be different if it was attached directly to the rectory or the church itself.
It's freestanding.
It's a freestanding sign.
As a projecting sign may be considered, but flush-mounted wall sign.
Does anyone have any questions about the guidelines themselves?
Got those, and Are you better at stating the motions?
Well, this is kind of my first, I mean, I was on the Zoom call, but it was hard to hear, so I don't really know what to say with those. I'm still learning.
You have a guide there too that gives you some suggested motions.
Oh,
but
see?
You can certainly motion however you please.
We could refer it back to the Board of Aldermen to determine what direction they want to go on this type of thing. Now, we had a request for billboards, big lighted billboards in the downtown out by McDonald. They turned that down, some agency, not us, but that was turned down. We had one for a bar and restaurant on Washington, and it was turned down on the basis of night lights and the like. So that you have to have signs in a community, but you don't want them to become the dominant thing. When you drive into the town at night, you see nothing but bright, ugly signs, and that's not saying this sign is ugly. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying the overall effect that this could generate.
Is there a way to easily modify the policies to
And I would-
add something to say about the types of signs or the content of the signs, or?
The guidelines could be modified, but the guidelines are for the Secretary of the Interior. Modified slightly for this town, and that, if we wanted to do that, I would want to go through some feedback from citizens. It would be a process. And then take it to this board, who would then recommend it to the Board of Aldermen. So that is a possibility.
But that's a project.
Yes. I would also insert here that, this tonight is your consideration of whether this sign fits into these guidelines. If approved, the parish then has the capability to go to planning and zoning. Planning and zoning would then approve or deny, and then that would go on to the Board of Aldermen. That is the process.
So, I know in the past, if we've denied something, it has been appealed to the aldermen. Would this go to planning and zoning first? If we deny, could it be brought?
Your decision could be appealed, but that is a historic preservation decision. Planning and zoning is separate.
I'll make a motion that we refer this particular item to the Board of Aldermen for further guidance.
I'm not sure you can make that motion because there's nothing in ordinance that allows that motion.
But if we deny, then they can appeal to
Absolutely.
the,
If you deny, I would need the specific sections of the guideline that we're denying based on. I would draft a letter, send it to the parish, and they have the right to appeal that decision.
but I would
I am
then,
not certain, I apologize for interrupting you, if the appeal would be to the board or to the circuit court, honestly. But they do have a right of appeal, absolutely.
I fear that I would deny the proposal as presented, partly because of the ordinances.
Well, our guidelines didn't come from the Department of the Interior. They came from a contract we had with the firm in Colorado, I believe.
They are, but they're based on the Secretary of Interior standards. We did
Yeah.
contract to have them written.
So, are you wanting to deny it based on the sign guidelines or the lighting guidelines?
Well, both really, I'm looking to see which specific ones are,
The internal illumination one, and
So, it would be,
well, the design guideline for signs, H, sign materials must be compatible with the building facade.
So upon a determination by the commission or administrator that an application for a certificate of appropriateness be denied, the applicant or any other interested party may, within 30 days after the postmarked date of receipt of the notice, which you will provide me if you choose to deny the sections we're quoting, file with the city clerk a written appeal to the City of St. Genevieve Board of Aldermen specifying the grounds thereof. So they would appeal to the Board of Aldermen within 30 days of receiving the notice.
And also, in the design guidelines for signs, if internal illumination is used on a sign, it should be subordinate to the overall building composition. And this is basically designed to catch the eye, to divert from the buildings to the sign.
So I have a motion to deny the certificate of appropriateness based on the design guidelines for signs, which is S1, section H and N. Do I have a second?
And is that, I'm sorry, Leanne making that motion?
Yes, it is.
So you're making a motion to deny the certificate of appropriateness based on guideline S1, section H and N, H being sign material should be compatible with the building facade.
Yes,
And if
and
internal illumination is used on a sign, it should be designed to be subordinate to the overall building composition.
yes. And neon illumination, which is as close as we're going to get in these guidelines to LED, may be considered, but in limited amounts, so it does not become visually obtrusive. Its purpose is to be visually obtrusive.
Okay?
Do I have a second to deny their application?
I'm so torn.
This is the fun part.
Welcome to your second meeting.
Well, I'm hardly counting the first one.
Welcome to your first.
I mean, if you're going by the guidelines, I think it doesn't match. And whether that means that we need to modify the rules to get with the times, I think that's where I'm at, is that we need, if we're gonna consider stuff and move into the future, then we need systemic change. And that would mean that we'd have to update.
So I understand the motives behind the sign. I understand the perceived need for the sign, but as the historic
Board.
board, we have to go by these guidelines, and these guidelines do not
And that's
allow.
what I'm saying. So I guess I will second.
You are seconding the motion?
Okay, I have a motion and a second to deny the application based on our design guidelines, S1, sections H and N. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I will place that letter in the mail tomorrow so that,
We'll be sending one back, just so you know.
Yeah.
Just be looking for it coming back.
so, if you have any questions, give me a call, but you kind of heard me state the process from here, okay? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to the next.
Oh, God, I'm going to burn in hell.
SGHC 007-21, to receive a certificate of appropriateness to replace existing wooden windows with white vinyl windows at 118 North Fifth Street. Do we have anyone here to speak on this? Would you mind stepping to the podium and introducing yourself, please?
My name is Steve Walden, and I own the property at that address, at the 118. The windows in it right now are, they're just very poor shape, and I'd like to update the house and just make it look a lot nicer.
Is there any way to repair the wooden windows?
Not the existing ones. They're split, they're split in a lot of places. They're just way past their prime.
The windows are in such condition that they cannot be repaired, is it?
The ones that are there could not be, there's I might be able to use some parts off of a couple of them to maybe make a couple of good ones, but there's a lot of windows. And I don't know that I could actually make a good window out of what is there.
Our guidelines recommend that you repair them if it's possible to repair them. If not, the windows that you're proposing to put in, how will they in appearance
To me, they would look
compared
like,
to the existing?
to me, they would look like a painted window. From a distance, they're gonna be white, like a wooden window would be if it was painted white, which is what the windows are right now. They're wooden, but they're painted white. The worst of it is the interior structure of the windows.
What are they now, 1/1s mostly?
Looks like
Looks like
202.
202s.
I think they're 202.
There's a couple that are different, but they're mostly 202.
Yeah, I know how that goes, they repair them as
Yeah.
they go bad, and you get a real menagerie. But the building is a significant building. We should not be doing anything that alters its appearance. And are the majority of the windows in the house, if they are original, or what, 1/1s, 2/2s, or what?
Most of them are 2/2, so I assume that's the majority of them, and then the backside has had some additions over time, so it's not nearly as, I don't know what the age of the additions are, but they're not nearly as old as, like, say, the original structure.
Will you go back with 2/2s?
If
For
I
the
can
replacement.
find them, I'm not, usually we just do open panes, just 1/1, I guess.
Well, I noticed on the product information here, there is a page where you, they call it grills.
Well, here's,
The grill
on
pattern.
this picture of the front, it shows 2/2s on the ground floor and 4/4s, which I've never,
Because it just has.
don't
Yeah,
ever
these are
remember
just the-
seeing.
Okay.
It's just.
Yeah, and I
top
individual,
floor.
Yeah, and I didn't really
Oh,
go
this is
around, and
additional
I should
ones
have
available.
drawn out the windows
Yeah,
to
I
know
was
exactly
looking
which
at
ones
it.
we'd be talking
Well,
about. each.
what configuration are you putting in?
Whatever you would have recommended, I guess, is what we would, I'm open for any design, just as long as we could, put something in there that's gonna be, to update, I'm not gonna say so much say update the house, but to just make energy efficientness and.
Our information from the studies that have been done, fenestration consists largely of 2/2s, double hung sash windows in either vertical or horizontal mountains. So what are your plans now?
Well, I just want to get good windows in the house and, just get it to where it's a good looking house. I'm not, if it's feasible to put wooden windows in, if they're purchasable, I would do that. I don't know where you would get them. Pretty much,
Well, all I'm suggesting is if we're going to replace all the windows, they should be as nearly as possible as we can determine what was in the house originally.
okay.
Because it is a rather good house in this community.
Yeah, and then what was there originally, I don't really know what was what was the main, the type of window they used. Because I guess if I went in, I'd figure out which part of the house is the oldest, and if those are the windows that are there, we could go with that.
The storm windows tend to kind of hide the windows, but the front are all 2/2. I don't know that they're original, but they're very old. And the sides are mostly 2/2.
Look at the top window.
Are you planning on
It's-
staying with the same window size?
part of it.
You're not going to alter that?
No, it'd be
at
the
all?
same size, yeah, as long as I can obtain them, which I don't see a problem with
It is
that.
It's a window I've never seen before.
I
It's
agree.
a 4/4.
All
And
right,
that's all I'm
I'm
suggesting,
wondering-
if we're going to
I'm
go
wondering
this
if
route,
the-
it should be as nearly as possible identical to what was originally in the house.
Yeah, I don't, at first I thought maybe the interior sash had been raised, so it looks like, but the center line goes all the way down. So I am perplexed by that myself.
are you going with this particular brand, this Silver Line?
Silver line is what we normally use, but like, I've not really dealt with a historic house in the past, so some of this is new to me as far as what I need to do also is, or what I need to present, you know.
Well, I see the patterns here that they're got displayed on the sheet, but none of them match the older type window.
On that page though, it says that there's more available,
More grill patterns.
more grill patterns available.
There are multiple grill patterns available. I would add, just for your consideration, that this house was vacant, uninhabited, and then significantly deteriorated. It had been uninhabited for probably 2 years at least. So improvements are definitely welcome, though, of course, wood or vinyl is up to you, but it's nice to see someone fixing it.
Yeah, agreed. It's just that while we are doing it, we have a pretty good description. The building was surveyed, and it was determined to be a valuable building.
Absolutely.
So we should try to keep it that way. And I'm not arguing at this point against the vinyl windows, although I don't know why they want to go vinyl rather than wood. But at least we should have the configuration out of whatever material it is. The configuration should match as nearly as we can determine the original materials or the original configurations.
We can certainly work that into the motion.
Well, the grill patterns that they have here don't really match the 2/2, but it says additional patterns available on here.
Is it that the vinyl's just not desirable since it
Well,
really should go back to
that's-
wood, or?
We've had long discussions about that, but anything that's going to protect the house is good, and as long as you're not going to change the window openings in any way.
Well, this string of windows right here, it says additional patterns available.
Yeah,
I think if you're going to get historically correct, you're going to have to look for those additional patterns,
well, let me see.
because I don't see it
I'm
here.
What
on
is
their
it, Silver
website,
Line?
and it doesn't have it on their website.
doesn't?
I'm on there now.
Oh, rats.
It
Because
says
I
the
was gonna
same
see
thing, additional patterns available.
Available where? But,
And this isn't something I have to have approved today. I could come back next month.
Are they double glass?
No, they're single.
They'll just be single glass?
What is there right now is, I would prefer to put double paint
Then-
in, but
then
I mean,
you
I could also research and see if I cannot come up
Well,
with
if
wooden
they're just
windows.
single glass, then we're going to have another request very soon for storm windows.
Okay.
And what would that be?
Storm windows are currently on that.
Yeah, there are storm windows there.
But will you replace those old storm windows over the new windows?
Well, if I went with the vinyl windows, I probably would do away with the storm windows.
Right.
because-
Normally, when you replace to vinyl, it's because the reason is usually given is because it's double glass with space in between for insulation. I think we really need to know a little bit more. I'm not opposed to replacing the windows, but I think we need a little bit more information as to what they're replacing them with, so that it does, as nearly as possible, conform to what was there when the building was determined to be essential or
Sure.
valuable.
So your concern is, I mean, obviously you would love to see wood, but the vinyl is okay if we can continue to have the same number of lights per window.
That's one thing. From their point, though, they're going to want to know whether they're going to have storm windows to make them efficient, or whether they're going to depend on a single pane.
Did you plan to keep the storm windows if you get vinyl windows approved?
If the vinyl windows, I would stick with just that. I wouldn't, to me, my personal opinion on those storm windows, especially with the aluminum color to them, to me, they look worse, the worst thing you can have on a house. To me, they look just horrible. If I was to do wooden windows, I would probably want to have storm windows, but then I would like to have like the white, at least white, painted white or white vinyl storm windows, so I don't know how that goes, but like I said, to me, the look of those old aluminum storm windows to me is horrible. It's not very appealing at all. So I mean, I think the vinyl windows would look much better if I did the same the right configuration, the storm windows do away with, or the windows and do away with storm windows, have no storm windows.
Can you do a motion
Unless that
with
is
a
something, is that
contingency?
something you
Can do a
desire, the
motion
storm
with a
windows?
contingency? Like, we approve it if,
You
I
can-
don't know.
Yes,
That was-
you can make a motion that says, motion to approve the certificate as long as the number of lights.
Okay. I didn't know if that was an allowed thing.
Yes.
So I know the report says that the house consists largely of 2/2 double hung windows. So I know, I'm very familiar with the house. It sits behind mine.
Okay.
So I can see it.
You can't hardly see it, but from
I-
all the bamboo probably,
I know that, and I've driven past it a lot when I swing around the block. I know that there are a lot of 2/2s. I did not notice that one is a 4/4 though. But if you were willing to do all vinyl 2/2s for all of the replacement windows, would you be willing to do that?
Mhm.
Okay. How many windows are you replacing in total?
you know,
do
I didn't count them. Just know
A
there's
lot.
a bunch.
A lot.
A lot.
Would they be single glass or double glass?
Most vinyl's double, and some vinyl's triple. So,
My only concern is if we put in singles, then the buyer or tenant will discover that their electric or their heating bill is too much and come in wanting to put aluminum storm windows on.
Yeah, they'll definitely be double pane or insulated. And I don't know if you have anything about them being tinted or not, any Louise or anything like that, but we just finished a house at 905 Ridgeway, and pretty much, I mean,
You did it, the one up by, that has the deck,
Mhm.
you did a great job with
Thank
that.
you. But,
My parents live on Ridgeway, and we've just been admiring it,
Right.
the whole process.
it would be neat, but if you had kids in football, it would be awesome, because the deck just overlooks the football field.
Well, it was
but-
a rat stash before you fixed it.
Oh, it
so-
was pretty bad, so, yeah, and we did some extra stuff. I mean, we actually, in the basement, we,
It was bad.
did some extra work to it that made it much
Yeah.
better, and, but the big thing about Volley's house, and this house here was being worked on before I bought it, and I can just tell you that if the way what was being done to it was, I'd have been embarrassed to have sold it to anybody, because when we went in, we've gotten all that plaster and the slats out, and there was no insulation. The only insulation it had was a straw hat that somebody had left behind the slats at one point. That's it, that's all the insulation, and that's the way Ridgeway was. We pulled that all out and we insulated everything, the attic. So, I mean, when I do this, I do it kind of as if I'm gonna use it as a rental house, but then Ridgeway was a little too nice and wasn't much out here for sale, and that's why we decided to put it up for sale. But if I have a renter go into a house, I don't want them struggling to pay me rent and their electric. I want them to be highly, as efficient as I can get them. So as far as like the storm windows, I mean, if I could get some good triple pane glass, I may even do that. It just, I'd like for them to be I want it to be something I'm proud of when I'm done. No,
This is kind of
Doesn't
off the
matter,
wall
so.
question, but down the road, are you ever thinking about replacing the steel siding? Or are you gonna leave that on?
I'd probably leave that on.
Okay.
Now Ridgeway, we replaced all the siding on it because it was, I guess was asbestos or that, whatever that material is. So we had it all bagged and replaced it. I mean, I could have covered it, I guess, but I don't want this stuff around if it's used well, and that's kind of how we try to do it. So I mean, I'll work with anything you guys want to do. And some of it I'm going to be kind of new at, but I'm going to try and always do the best materials and everything possible.
Do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. So I would motion to approve do I have to say SGHC 007
That's fine.
21, with the contingency that you make it the 2/2. And I can make it match.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve the certificate as long as you go with the 2/2 windows.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. But I think we're making a mistake not to ask for double strength window, or not double strength, but insulated windows so that we don't have another.
We can certainly put that in.
Well, on the glass on this,
I prefer to use the double pane windows.
Yeah.
But with the
Single line.
configuration you're talking about.
The single line are double pane windows.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So then that motion carries 3-1-1.
Okay. And we are going to move on to SGHC 008-21 to receive a certificate of appropriateness to replace the existing asbestos tile roof with standing seam, hidden fastener metal roofing at 118 North Fifth Street.
and this is apparently residential.
Is the wood under the existing roof in good shape?
It
Or do you-
is,
have you
but
looked at it?
we have, but it is actually, it isn't like a decked roof. It is 3 by 1 inch, basically like furred out strips that these things are nailed to. And the bad thing about it is it's made it very possible for squirrels have been getting in there for years, and
Or are you planning to take the old roof off or just?
all that's gonna come off, and then we will put decking on top of those, and then the standing seam will go on top of that.
The advantage to taking them off is that then you know what's under, you know whether the wood underneath is good.
Well, the wood is good. I mean, we've got the attic is all clean up, so we've hammered on from the inside, just checking all the wood, and it's all, there's a few spots that'll have to be replaced because the squirrels have actually chewed the whole board gone.
This is a case where it's very possibly the original roof.
I would say so,
Yes,
yeah.
that roof's probably been there 75 to 100 years.
Well, and they put this roof over some other material that's like all deteriorated, and like I said, the squirrels have chewed lots of stuff.
So you're planning to put it right over the existing roof?
Well, we're gonna pull all the shingles off, and then we'll go put decking on top of the 3 by 1 furred strips, and then the metal roof will go on top of the decking. And part of the reason for that is if you didn't put decking down and then the metal, if you had a hard rain, you wouldn't be able to sleep in the house, I don't think. So it'll dampen the noise and it, I mean, it is quite a bit more expensive to put the decking on, but I don't want to do it without doing that.
Do we have any other questions on the roof?
I'll make a motion, we approve the project as submitted.
I have a motion to approve
I second that.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll put those in the mail to you.
Okay, so, and just one question though, so like, when I get a house that has the wooden windows, I mean, how important is it to try and to go with the wooden windows? Even if I mean, to me, because if you do the wooden windows and they're single pane, you almost have to go back with storm windows.
Guidelines, the guidelines encourage you to keep the wooden windows, also encourages you to put storm windows on the inside,
Okay,
which is a little different.
I've heard of those.
But it would be preferred to keep the wooden windows as much as possible, unless they're just not replaceable.
Okay. All right, I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All righty,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay. Moving on to SGHC 009-21 to receive a certificate of appropriateness to construct a deck on the front of the house at 419 Robert Street. And we don't have anyone here to speak on it.
Well, I know I had questions.
I can answer as many as I can answer, and then we can put this on the next agenda.
What is this? All we have is an outline of where it's gonna be.
Correct. You
And,
treated lumber.
you know, how far off the ground is it gonna be?
He did not say that, but it would be less than 30 inches, because I asked him that, because 30 inches would require a guardrail. Though he did mention there would be a guardrail also treated lumber.
Well, what's it gonna be, just a floor?
No, he said there would be a guardrail. The reason I brought that up is because I asked him about 30 inches, and he said it would be less. So it wouldn't have to have a guardrail, but he said he was going to put a guardrail on it.
Sure wish he'd submitted a drawing so we know what the thing is going to look like.
Well,
That is there are some important historic buildings in that area. And that particular building is pretty well cluttered up anyway. I mean, the side of it is all asphalt or whatever. And the front's very narrow. And I just don't see how he's gonna get anything in addition in the front. It's going to be the appearance you want.
so, and I may have interpreted the drawing incorrectly, but it's going to kind of wrap around where the current porch is and tuck in. So what about the tree that's there next to the driveway? Will that have to come out?
I believe it will go up to it. I don't think they
Okay.
want to get rid of
Because
it.
I was trying to figure out how big exactly and then, okay.
It comes 12 foot off of the corner
Corner.
that you would see to your right in this picture.
Okay.
So it does not come 12 foot off the other corner. Obviously, there's an enclosed, what I imagine was a porch at one time enclosed, and it comes approximately 7 to 8 foot off that and would leave somewhere between 6 and 10 foot of grass between the deck and the sidewalk.
So it's going to be L-shaped, hugging the entire front of the home.
Correct.
Is it gonna have any covering on it or just a regular deck?
There's no covering proposed.
It would be, how far off the ground is it?
He did not say, but it would be less than 30 inches.
Because you could make an awful looking thing out of that with the information we know.
We can motion to table it until next meeting.
I think that would be a
Since
very advisable thing
I
to
think
do.
we all may have additional questions and
That's
go
absolutely
that
fine.
route.
If we make a motion to table, we just need to be specific as to next meeting, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it does not look like there's a whole lot of room there.
I would be curious exactly how far from the sidewalk to the deck it's going to be as well, so.
Okay.
They'll have to have steps coming down from it. of some sort, even at under 30 inches, and where are they going to go? Are they going to go
Straight off.
straight off toward the sidewalk? Are they going to go up to the side?
Towards their driveway?
Yeah,
Because the building is kind of quaint the way it is right now. I mean, it's not great, but it's a quaint little building. The side, the east side is terrible. I mean, there's asphalt right up to the building but I guess he would build it the same height as the
The
first
porches there.
floor.
Yeah.
I would think.
But I don't
see
know.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4 steps there, though the first one's very short. Most of those steps are probably about 7 inches. So you're probably talking somewhere between 20 and 28 inches.
Yeah. And it would be just a deck with a railing around it, or?
Correct. Made of treated lumber.
Would we like to vote on it now, or would we like to
And he can
table?
go as far out in front as he has to.
No, there's zoning restrictions, so he can only come up out to a certain distance, and what he submitted abides by that. But it's still
Yeah.
close to the sidewalk.
Well, I really think your suggestion that we table it and get a little bit more information would, I don't want to make a decision on something that messes up some of the other historic buildings in that area.
yeah, it's a nice little neighborhood there, and I mean, they've got room for the 14-foot for the front, but 12 feet out from the corner of that house, I'm not that, I would agree with tabling it. Do I need to make a motion thereof?
Someone does.
I would motion that we table this request until someone is here to speak to us about it and provide more information.
A second.
I have a motion and a second to table until, do we want to say next meeting, or we want to leave it until we can actually have a representative here?
We have to give it a date, so we have a motion till February. And I will, as I have for this meeting, reach out and encourage someone to show up to speak to it. It's that, in February, it doesn't, actually February, it'd be March, but we have to give it a date.
All right.
You say February, and then if they don't come in February, then you just push it to March, I mean.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to table until February, and we will reach out to a representative. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to administrative approvals.
I have none.
Okay, moving on to other business.
Just an update on the Dubourg Historic Preservation grant we received. So this is for the window and wood siding preservation workshop that is tentatively scheduled in May. This commission approved that last meeting and sent it on to the Board of Aldermen, who also approved it. So I'm in the process of discussing the details with the vendor, and we'll come back to you with that once we have that, which will hopefully be the February meeting. That's all I have.
Okay,
All righty.
any public comments? From the one person left. Okay. All right, we will adjourn.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.